last post here sparked quite a discussion, I've decided to post another one of my unsettling stories that are tied to local forests. I grew up in these forests, and I feel quite comfortable there. Nevertheless, I stumbled into a few unsettling situations there that would firmly stick in my mind forever. This was one such occasion. I was 18 at that time. One evening, me and my two friends, Mike and Paul, decided to go camping. Well, camping maybe isn't the right word, since we didn't intend to spend the night, only to chill and have some fun time around the campfire for a while. The plan was simple. Head out, build a campfire, drink a few bottles of wine, eat something, and head back home for a good night's sleep. We met at my house when it was still sunny outside. We got ready and we headed out. Our destination was an old abandoned quarry in the middle of the woods, which was maybe 40 minutes from my house. Even though the quarry has a tragic and frankly creepy history, it's a popular place for such occasions. When we got there, the sky was already colored red as the sun slowly sank behind the hills. We quickly gathered all the firewood that we could so that we wouldn't have to look for it later. As the darkness fell and absorbed all of our surroundings into impenetrable blackness, we already managed to get the fire going. We were in a great mood, and we were getting ready for our first toast. That's when we realized that we made a horrible mistake. We forgot the corkscrew. We were trying to open the wine without it, but we quickly gave up because the bottles were quite expensive, and we didn't want to damage them. At this point, it was clear that one of us would have to sacrifice himself and jog back to retrieve the corkscrew. After a bit of haggling, I volunteered. However, I had two conditions. Firstly, they would give me a hatchet in case something went wrong along the way. Secondly, no pranks when I got back. Mike and Paul agreed without hesitation. They shoved a hatchet into my one hand and a flashlight to the other and sent me on my way. As I was jogging through the forest, I heard a noise resembling a wild boar. Suddenly, I remembered a warning I received from an older hunter a few days ago. He said that this time of year, boars were getting dangerous, especially at night. I was a bit nervous, but luckily I managed to survive with no harm. I arrived safely to my house, much to the surprise of my mom, who didn't expect me so early. I explained the whole deal. She just laughed. I grabbed the corkscrew and was back on my way. Not wanting to experience an unpleasant boar encounter, I chose another, slightly longer path, this time through an open field. After a while, I got to our spot. It was a small clearing, surrounded on one side by massive rocks, maybe 70 meters tall, and on the other side by thick forest. Somewhere in the middle of the clearing was our campfire. When I approached it, I realized that there wasn't anybody, although our backpacks were still on the ground, and the fire was burning bright. Great, we specifically agreed that there would be no pranks when I got back. Those dicks probably think that they're funny. I resignedly sat down near the fire while facing the woods. That's the only place where those two assholes could have hidden, I thought. I was really tired, and all I could think about was the taste of that exquisite Pinot Noir we brought with us. I really wasn't in the mood for their games, and I was getting quite mad. That's when I heard a snapping of twigs and rustling of leaves from the edge of the forest, maybe 30 meters from where I was sitting. The sound was rhythmical, and it was undoubtedly the sound of someone walking. I aimed my flashlight at the spot where the sounds were coming from. Between the trees, I spotted a tall person wearing a dark hoodie. As I shined my flashlight on him, he stopped walking, turned to me, and just kept staring motionlessly. Even though he was directly facing me, I couldn't really see his face. I shouted, "Paul, you fat bitch. I know you're trying to scare me. We all agreed on something, so stop messing around and come out." As I finished, the hooded figure just turned around and walked deeper into the woods. Exactly at that time, My phone started ringing. Hastily, I took it out of my pocket. It was Mike. I took the call and started barking at him. Really funny, you assholes. I thought we agreed on something. What are you talking about? I'm talking about you trying to fuck with me. I clearly saw you, so you can come out now. Mike froze for a minute. For what seemed like an eternity, all I could hear was his heavy breathing and Paul mumbling something in the background. When he finally snapped back to reality, he just said, "Dude, we're at your house. We heard some footsteps. At first we just thought that you were trying to fuck with us, but then we got scared and decided to look after you. I forgot the phone at your house, so we couldn't even call you. Just get the hell out of there, and we'll come back for our stuff together." Bullshit. That's just another of your funny pranks, and I'm not buying it. Hold on a second. For a while, all I could hear was some incoherent mumbling. "Hey, what's going on?" asked the voice of my mom, coming from the phone. My head suddenly spun, and my heart skipped a beat as I realized that they weren't kidding. Suddenly, a freezing wave of fear ran through my body. However, I managed to convince my mom that everything was just fine, that she didn't need to worry. She gave the phone back to Mike. "Just leave everything and come back. We're headed out now. We'll meet you halfway there." "I'm not going anywhere alone again. You better get your asses here and do it quick. I'm waiting for you." I hung up. I didn't wish to make any more noise than I already did. I quickly turned off my flashlight and started to back off from the light of the fire. I moved all the way to the huge wall of rocks. I figured that if I had my back covered by the rocks, I would eliminate one of the possible ways the unwanted visitor could approach me. I was standing there in complete darkness, trying not to make a sound, while tightly clutching my hatchet, which would be, for the next half hour, my best friend. I had to constantly convince myself not to curl up into a ball in fear. Even my own body started to betray me as my hearing got worse due to my savagely beating heart. I was trying to calm myself, but then again, in worst case scenario, every little bit of adrenaline would help. After what seemed like an eternity, I spotted 2 weak light beams coming from the forest. I heard Paul shout my name. I've never been so relieved. I finally ran out of my hiding to greet my 2 friends. For quite some time, we were just standing there, laughing like maniacs from relief. We were even getting a bit cocky, and we thought about staying. After all, there was just one, supposedly, creep lurking between the trees, and there were 3 of us. Funny, just minutes earlier, I was shitting myself with fear, and now I was suddenly full of tough macho bullshit, thinking, what could possibly happen? In the end, healthy judgment got the better of us, and we decided to leave. We packed our things, put out the fire, and got out. We took our bottles of wine to enjoy somewhere else, somewhere where it's nice and brightly lit. Quick backstory. I'm newly moved, 21 male, into my house, and I'm still not 100% familiar with my own neighborhood yet. The way the neighborhood was built makes it a rectangular shape laying down, with my house at the top right corner of it. Sorry if that's confusing. I can clarify later if needed. So the other night, around 2:30 a.m., I was at my house when I decided to take a break from playing guitar and have a smoke before bed. So I grabbed a smoke and started out my front door. About 3 or so minutes into my cig, I noticed this faint noise of what sounds like an old, creaky metal object that needs to get oiled. But the sound has a cadence, which makes it repeat every 2 or 3 seconds. After this happens for about 10 seconds, I notice that I can hear tires gripping on the road as well. Then, out of nowhere, I see a man who looks to be in his mid-40s, riding this horribly beaten-down bike that emitted a very intense, ear-piercing, high-pitched squeak every time he pedaled. As I stood in my driveway and he passed me, He kept moving forward, but his head slowly rotated left, and he locked eyes with me. I'm not kidding when I say this guy looked identical to Hannibal Lecter from the movies, but that's not what made my heart drop. As I'm locking eyes with him, and he's moving past my driveway, he suddenly gives me the scariest, widest, scariest jagged-toothed smile I've ever seen in my life, and continues to lock eyes with me. And this wasn't an ordinary smile. I'm talking When the Grinch Stole Christmas, ear-to-ear smile. With 15 more seconds, he continues pedaling and is out of sight. I can now just faintly hear his bicycle gears squeaking. At this point, I'm wondering whether or not he's going around my rectangular block of a neighborhood, and whether or not I can achieve this zig fast enough to get inside before he comes around again. As I'm doing this, I begin to hear the metal creak noise, but I also hear something different. I hear this dude laughing like a fucking maniac, which made me nope the fuck out of there. As I'm stumbling for my door handle because of the adrenaline rush, he begins to round the turn where my door is almost in view. At the exact moment where it would have become visible, I got my door open, ran in, and slammed it shut and locked it. No sooner does my door close do I hear the man from outside scream as loud as can be, "Where'd you go?" At this point, I went into full-out battle mode, ran around my house and turned all the lights off, battle crawled to my bedroom, and waited. As I lay on my bed for the next 30 minutes, I would hear the squeaking of the bike for about 30 seconds, every 3 to 4 minutes. About 30 to 45 minutes later, it finally stopped, and the man was gone. I've actually quit smoking since then, and haven't been outside that late. But every now and then, around 2:30 a.m., I can still hear the squeaking of the bicycle from outside my room window. Almost immediately after getting my undergraduate degree in philosophy and classical civilization, I landed an entry-level job in a related field, waiting tables at a high-end local Tex-Mex chain while studying and saving up to accrue yet more debt in graduate school. For those of you who are or have been in this line of work, I will be preaching to the choir, but double shifts and clopins, closing one night and opening the next morning, pickup shifts, camping tables, tend to pile up and wear on the soul. Certain vices become ever more enticing to those who wear non-slip shoes, stumbling off a shift out into the deserted shrines to consumerism that are suburban intersections flanked on all sides by shopping centers. And I felt the draw as much as the next. But despite a very strong genetic predisposition, I avoided the more damaging habits. Alcohol and nicotine, sure, but where did I go to spend some hard-earned cash after refilling umpteen bowls of chips and serving queso-drenched chimichangas? Across the street to the Chipotle, of course. Don't judge. I digress. So, although the two restaurants are basically kitty corner from one another, the accessibility of both parking lots and the idiotic stoplight timing makes the trip approximately 1 cigarette long. I step out to finish my cigarette and unbutton my salsa-stained shirt. It wasn't that bad. I was just inexplicably self-conscious about wearing another restaurant's logo into the store. And as I do, a silver Mercedes with highly tinted windows comes screeching to a halt about 2.5 spots to my left in the handicapped spot closest to the store. 2.5 in that his parking job perfectly matched his choice of parking spot and assholishness. I say that because the driver of this car hops out and quickly jogs up to the door before calmly proceeding to the counter when he realizes it's still open. He glances back a few times. Embarrassed that someone saw you? You should be, I thought. At this point, I was already feeling, fuck that guy, and imagining what I would never say to him when I got behind him in line. I finish my cigarette, stomp out the butt, and turn around to fling my shirt into my already cluttered car. As I turn back, the passenger door of the Mercedes opens up, and a young woman sort of crawls out. It took me a second to register her presence, because I could see asshole driver still inside, probably reaching over the sneeze guard to point at the pinto beans like an asshole, and I don't register her first timid request. She repeated more frantically and coming towards me, clutching her purse close to her chest. "Can you please help me?" She must have seen me looking from her to the car to the asshole, because she glances over her shoulder and then back at me. I've got warning bells and nope signals blaring in my head, but thinking she may just want to bum a cigarette or something, when I don't instantly match her apparent growing level of panic. She looks right in my eyes and says, "Please, can you call the police? He's..." As if the pronoun were a command, all three of us look at each other. Her and I glance at him and see him turning to glare at us. Even though he's probably 40 yards away and inside, I see confusion, shock, and rage register on his features almost instantaneously. "Please," she begs. "He's trying to kill me." At this, something deep inside me flips on, and my actions that follow are deliberate, clear, and without panic. Believe me or don't, but what follows is my best recollection of events that followed, and would be happy to address anything that is unclear or unbelievable. I fling open my rear door, simultaneously apologizing for the mess, a coat, some bags, books, and whatnot, and telling her to just shove the stuff out of the way or just hop on top. It doesn't matter. It felt like she dove in head first. I still had no idea what was going on, but my first priority was safety, and that means dialing 911 and getting it ringing before starting my car, putting on my seatbelt, and checking my surroundings. The young woman is sobbing in the back of my car, and I saw asshole sprinting towards the door of the restaurant. I'd like to tell you I pulled a perfect tire-squealing reverse 180, because that's what it felt like. But it was just a very quick and jostling point turn. Meanwhile, the 911 operator picks up, and after briefly giving my name and location, just in case, I handed the phone to my passenger to explain the situation so I could focus on the escape. As I mentioned before, accessibility for this parking lot is shit, so I had two choices: go out the nearest entrance next to the Chipotle and risk getting caught at a light, or quickly dash away from him to the far one. I chose the latter, but before I got to the main road, an idea hit me. A standalone bank broke asshole's line of sight, so I ducked into the crowded parking lot of the restaurant on the corner of the strip to hide. It was more public and populated, avoided a chase, and gave the police a stationary place to locate us. But I underestimated asshole's speed and determination. As I pulled into a spot with my lights off, I see headlights accelerating down the small road through the lot. He must have seen me, because he nearly drifted the sharp turn into our would-be hiding spot. My passenger begins screaming at me to get the fuck out of there, almost louder than my own gut saying the same thing. And she goes back to try to explain her situation to the operator. Thinking ahead and being very lucky, I had chosen a spot from which it was possible to exit forward, and he had to either pull the world's tightest turn or go around the row. So we got a head start on the chase I was trying to avoid. I pull onto the main road and accelerate, lucky to catch a green light. Unfortunately, so does my pursuer, who is on my bumper out of nowhere, brights on, and honking like a madman. Because I'm following normal traffic laws like a dumbass, he pulled alongside my car and matched my speed. I notice my passenger is having difficulty describing the situation, because seriously, who wouldn't? Sitting in the dark, cluttered back seat of a stranger's car, being pursued by a man who has, apparently, threatened to kill her? I calmly offer to help, because why the fuck not? It's not like this is the point in the movie where the tinted windows roll down and an automatic weapon sprays the side of my car. I take the phone and begin calmly giving the operator the street, our direction, speed, and a description of both vehicles. The operator informs me that no units are in the immediate area, but asks if I can get to a safe place. Right as I'm racking my brain for where on earth we can go, asshole pumps his brakes, began swerving to block the road, rolled down his window, and began pointing over the car, indicating for me to pull over. If it weren't terrifying, it would have been hilarious, but it gave me a chance to give his license plate. Just then, another car came up on us. An asshole got confused and made room. I take the opportunity to try to get out from behind him and start coming alongside him. He accelerates to match my speed, and I can't get ahead of him. Once again, I'm in the terrifying position of driving parallel with another car who doesn't want me on the road. Another bright, frantic, idea pops into my head as the raised median suddenly ended to my left. I told my passenger to hold on, and as quickly as I tried the shake and bake, I slammed on the brakes and pulled the U-ey. It took a second for asshole to correct, but soon he was on my bumper, but I wasn't about to let him pass. I slowed down to a crawl and cut off a few attempts of his to overtake me and informed the operator of our new direction and speed. I think asshole put two and two together because his attempts to pass me became more frantic, and so did the honking. Short of me hopping the curb, we were on a quarter-mile stretch of road without an exit, the same panic I had just felt seconds before going the opposite way. Unfortunately, the operator informed me it would be a while before units were close enough and asked me to get to a safe place. Right about this point, the road widened for the left turn lane, and asshole is beside me once again, and the light is red. We both speed up, but I can see over his car that no traffic is coming from the left, and at that last second, pull a hard right up this road where there's a church parking lot teenagers would use to practice driving. I could run around there for a while until the cops show up. Operator informed the responding unit to go there, just as I see asshole swinging left, nearly getting sideswept as he speeds off in the opposite direction. I head to the parking lot and circle around until I see red and blue, just in case. I thank the operator, park, and help my passenger out of the car. I offered her my jacket, which she refused, and a cigarette, which she took. As the officers began questioning her, her story gave me chills. To make a long story just slightly shorter, and because I don't want to violate privacy for a story I was doing my best to stop eavesdropping on, she had been seeing this guy for a while, and he became increasingly more violent and demanding. That night, he told her that they were going to move in together and beat her nearly senseless when she refused, then grabbed a bunch of stuff, dragged her to the car, and was going to take her back to his place. Even in the dim parking lights, I could see the bruises on her arms. He was a courier, always coming and going through the area, and had his truck parked somewhere in the direction he fled in. She told the officers he was armed, which explains her absolute panic. That didn't sink in until I got back to my house, after the officers realized I was just an unrelated, if shaken, party to the actual crimes, and sent me on my way. But another fact that still gives me chills, the Mercedes was her car, which I could recognize if it followed me home. But asshole knows what my car looks like, and the area I used to work. So, asshole driver, let's not meet. Hello, my lovely friends. Before the video ends, I just wanted to say that I hope that you're having a good end of the year. I know that this time can be hard for some, but I hope that you're still having a good month. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I appreciate you. Stay safe and sweet dreams.